Welcome to the next video in the Tenable Vulnerability Management Series. So if you're interested in learning vulnerability management, specifically Tenable, then please drop a like on the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. So we're going to look at a pretty cool feature that I think has some value. And so I want to make sure I expose you to everything that they're implemented in the product. And so we're going to be looking at the exposure response module. So remember, you can always click on here to go to the main menu, or I can go to the sub menus by clicking here. So for exposure response, there's some prerequisites that we have for this. So first of all, what is this for? Well, this allows you to be able to create initiatives that you're going to assign to different people to take action on, okay? So for this, we'll start by doing a new initiative. But before we can do a new initiative, we have to have some things set up. So you got to have, of course, you got to have tags that you create. And then also you can create combinations, or you can use existing combinations. We'll talk a little bit about what combinations are coming up in the video, okay? So first of all, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click here and it starts a new initiative. And that basically comes here and gives us this menu, and we'll just say we'll basically just type new initiative. All right, and then give it the description. I strongly recommend that you do give all of your whether it be policies, tags, scans, or everything, give it a description. You know, you don't have to be super detailed, but this initiative hopes to accomplish something. Okay, so once you've given it a actual description, then what you want to do is we have to have the owner click the drop down box here, and you can choose additional members of your team. The asset scope, so I'm going to choose the cybersecurity mentorship program. And by the way, cybersecurity mentorship program is where we actually do hands-on mentoring. They get the chance to learn Tenable, SentinelOne, command line programming, the whole nine, and the mentorship program. So I'm going to use those as an example. So I'll limit my scope here. And then remediate within, and we'll say we want to remediate this within 7 days. Say, for instance, these are maybe Microsoft updates, or maybe these are just, we have an audit coming up and we need to make sure these are taken care of. So 7 days is what we're going to do. Now, when it gets to the combinations, we also have to choose. So right now, I don't have any combinations because I want to create some combinations so you can see how that works. We also have combinations that are shared. So if somebody else has created combinations and maybe share those with me, I think that keyword being I think, because I haven't done a shared combination here. But for the meantime, let's go ahead and we'll look at the Tenable combination so you can see some of the categories: CISA, known exploited vulnerabilities, critical vulnerabilities, etc. So you have those, and basically, and it gives a good like an explanation of what it does, and it even shows the query, which I think is really nice. So this is one way you can learn the product by just reviewing some of the things that are in the product already, some of the things that are built in. You can actually look at those, and that's something that you can use to be able to increase your knowledge and your skill. But for this exercise, we're going to create a combination because I think it's worth doing, so you can kind of see what you can do in the power of the tool. So I'm going to say combination, and we'll do combination description. Now that we have those, and you see we could search combinations if we had some already, right? So then we have save queries. So if we had already created some queries before, we could do a save query, but we're going to create one. And so we're going to start off, we're going to use Tenable's metric, which is the VPR. And we're going to say the VPR, which is the vulnerability priority rating, is basically you have the CVSS V3 and V2 metrics. And I'll show you those right quick, just so you can kind of know what I'm talking about. Let's backspace here. And so you CVSS V2 base score, all these different metrics are related to the V2, then the V3 information. And I've done a video on that. I need to start linking that video. And then you even have the CVSS V4. But these are basically the metrics they use to determine what the severity level of the vulnerability is. But Tenable then has another metric that's Tenable specific called the vulnerability priority rating, which is the VPR. And then you can even use different aspects of the VPR. But here we're going to say the VPR, and we're going to say is greater than or equal to the number 10. This means that typically this VPR, that means Tenable has assessed the data that came from the CVSS information, and they say we're going to give you additional context. That's why you're paying us for this tool. And so we're going to tell you based on what we see, for instance, like how much is exploited in a while, not just looking at the vulnerability itself, but, looking at how many people are affected, how hard is it to exploit? Is the code there? All the different things, including some of the things already covered by the CVSS. And we're going to give you additional context, and we're going to put that information in our VPR score. So we can say it's greater than 10. And we can then use some of the other metrics to build out this query. And so we want to say exploit maturity, and we'll say it's equal to, and we're going to say high and functional. So that means that we have basically something that's rated at really high by Tenable, but also we know that there's exploit code there. So we'll stop there and we can go ahead and create our first combination. So now you notice that on the left-hand side, we have a combination here. So now that we have combination, let's go back to initiatives. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a new initiative, and I'm just going to say initiative and description. And then I'm going to choose the asset scope, which is a cybersecurity mentorship program. I'm going to say 7 days again. And then now notice that I have an assigned combination. So my combination is here. Looks like you have to toggle the combination on. See there? So that's how you enable. So if you have multiple combinations, you'll toggle those on and you'll click save here. And then now you notice that it's changed. So now we have an initiative. And so it's going to go through and looks like it's taking time to go through and assess the environment. And now you can see we actually have data. So I have 10 assets. I have 461 findings. And so this you can use to track like particular vulnerabilities. How am I doing? So average age of the vulnerability is 12 days. SLA is 7 days. So basically the average age is 12 and all the SLA is 7 to have it done. The average time to remediate is 7 days. And then percentage of findings remediated. So based on my combination, looks like 79% of those have been remediated already. So new findings versus remediated findings, this is something that'll populate over time. So if you have, once again, the way you created this query, this is going to be dynamic. So as new data populates into Tenable, then it's going to fill here. And then let's see what's new. Top new plugins, top new assets. So these are all helpful things. So let's talk a little bit about like this feature I think is really cool. Oh, I did forget one thing. So let's take a look at, we got the managed combinations and you understand how to do that, right? Let's look at the combinations timeline. This looks like this is where they're adding new CVEs to the combinations that already existed. Look at that. So critical, remotely exploited. And so you remember when we were going to combinations, let's take a trip back there for a second. Okay. And so the Tenable combinations, you can see critical, vulnerability, remotely exploited. So the combination timeline is telling us when they're adding new CVEs to the combination. So I think that's pretty cool. And so combinations with updates. So this is all helpful information. So let's bring this all home. So how do I think this is valuable? So if you have a cybersecurity team, or if you are a single cybersecurity practitioner, like you're the only person over vulnerabilities, how do I think you can use this? Well, I think if you're trying to track what you've assigned out to a lot of other people, which is very common in vulnerability management, then typically what you want to do is you want to have some way of knowing if they've actually accomplished your task. And this is a real thing. So say, for instance, if you're working with your automation team, or maybe it's your help desk, maybe it's your server engineers, and you assign them, or even DevOps, and you assign them a list of vulnerabilities. And I recommend that you always, when you're doing this, that you try to be practical. Don't assign a ridiculous amount of vulnerabilities that you know based on that workload they can't remediate. So you got to be able to assess this and come up and narrow your scope to something that's tangible so that they can actually accomplish what they're trying to do. You can check that off the list and then you can reassign a new list of vulnerabilities. So I think initiatives for you as the vulnerability assessor or for the vulnerability management program using Tenable Vulnerability Management can use this feature to really have more control and organization over vulnerability management. So I'd love to hear what you think. If you use this feature extensively, we have a lot of knowledge. I would love to hear your feedback. But once again, I just want to make sure I'm covering the entire Tenable console, every single detail, unless I miss something. And if I do, let me know. So please like and subscribe if you're interested in this series. And thank you again for watching.